Good morning, Brownsville. Good afternoon, good evening, depending on when you're watching this feed. If this is your first time here, welcome. My name is Frank Olivo. Our program focuses on the very important issues that are affecting our local community. We have shed light on injustices, and we have allowed for our platform, this mic, to be that of the voice of the people. Now, if this is something that you can see yourself supporting, we ask that you like, comment, and share this live feed. Now, as of late, our Facebook page is at risk of being taken down. The powers that be do not want you, the voter, to know the truth, the constituent. But remember, we will not be silenced. Now, if you're really about the cause and you want to stand up to corruption and you want to hold our elected leaders accountable, well, we ask that you subscribe to our social media platforms. Currently, right now, we are streaming this feed, this episode on X, where we can be found under Frankie Olivo. On Facebook, you can find us under Frankie Olivo, and also on YouTube. We ask that you subscribe to our YouTube channel titled Frankie Olivo TV. Remember, Good Morning Brownsville will come on Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. religiously. So make sure you subscribe to Frankie Olivo TV on our YouTube channel. Always remember, we will not be silenced. And thank you so much, Brownsville, for the time and attention that you provide us, each and every one of you. Thank you so much for that. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are coming on a little bit later than what you are used to tuning in. We did post earlier that we were going to be busy this morning, that we were going to be following a case. We just got out a few moments ago. Karen Silva was before the magistrate court once again. This is a case on a writ of habeas that her defense team is making arguments, that they made arguments before the court that she is being detained illegally here in Cameron County. And it all stems from an order that was signed, ladies and gentlemen, by the court that states that the defendant, Karen Silva, was to remain in custody of the sheriff in Cameron County pending the outcome of the case, whether that be an acquittal, a conviction, or a dismissal. It is the position of the defense team that Ms. Karen Silva was being held illegally, that the order was not valid because the magistrate court, according to the defense team, does not have jurisdiction or the power to order the sheriff or the county of Cameron to maintain custody of someone. The request was for the defendant to be transferred over to the federal government. And this is a very interesting case because right now it seems as if Ms. Karen Silva is in limbo. We learned how when she was arrested, she was issued a bond. She ultimately paid that bond. Her attorney did sign an attorney surety. But once she signed off on that bond, once she paid her bond, the federal government, ICE, took custody of her. She was at Laredo at one point until the state of Texas in Cameron County, they did file a writ to have her brought back. So currently right now, Karen Silva was in a limbo because while she is in the custody of Cameron County, she is being detained by ICE, by the federal government. The way it works, ladies and gentlemen, is whenever a defendant is in custody, usually what happens is whatever outcome or case is, let's say hypothetically, she is given time, or let's say she is given probation with jail time. Well, usually the way it works is the judge will ask, how many days has the defendant been in custody? Why? Because for the most part, the defendant is entitled, pending the judge's approval, for her to receive credit for any and all time served while her case was pending before the judge. So Karen Silva was in a limbo. She wasn't receiving credit for her time in her federal case. What is interesting to learn from today's hearing, ladies and gentlemen, was that the sheriff, Mr. Manny Trevino, he was present along with one of his sergeants, Frank Mason, who did testify before the court. this case, ladies and gentlemen, has touched the hearts and captivated the minds of not just South Texas, but it seems as if the entire state. And who could forget this case? Is a tragedy. This was a case where a 4-year-old died after a field trip, where a preschool and employees of a preschool were found negligent. The state, Arturo Teniente, on behalf of the state, did argue that that Cameron County had the authority to hold Ms. Karen Silva. The state and also the judge did bring up a Supreme Court case, the U.S. versus Mauro. And that particular case, ladies and gentlemen, the Supreme Court ruled that it was wrong, that it was not wrong for a detainer regarding the rules and laws and regulations of the defendant. And there was briefs, arguments that were filed by both parties. And in the brief filed by the state, it did say that she had to be out in 48 hours, filed by the defense. I apologize. So there is a law, ladies and gentlemen, that the federal government has 48 hours once the individual, the defendant, is in custody to come and pick them up, to house them in federal custody. What is interesting to learn, ladies and gentlemen, was that there was this issue, this question before the court. Does the county have jurisdiction? Do they have jurisdiction to hold her after the fact that she posted bond? So essentially what the court has before the magistrate court was, is it true what the defense is arguing, that Ms. Karen Silva is being held illegally? Her rights are being violated. Currently, right now, Ms. Karen Silva is pregnant. She is completing or just completed her first trimester. And currently, right now, the way Cameron County and the federal government stand, there is no agreement. Currently, right now, there is no contract to where Cameron County houses federal inmates. We saw how during the previous administration of Eddie Garza, the former sheriff, the federal government broke all ties for different reasons. So technically right now, Cameron County does not and could not or should not be housing detainees of the federal government. And that was one of the defense's main argument. They did make arguments before the court, and in their brief, the issue of the detainer and all the other issues were before the judge. And what happened, ladies and gentlemen, was that Karen Silva was arrested in Brownsville. She posted bond. Once she posted bond, ICE took custody of her. They took her to Laredo. The state of Texas, Cameron County, filed the writ of habeas. They brought her back to Cameron County to bring her before the court. The state is saying, hey, we can't do that. She's being held illegally. There is no authority to be cited, which allows for her detention after the fact that she did post bond. And the judge did state that she did read the Supreme Court case of the United States versus Mauro, and she did find that there is no detainer right now at all. And before the court, and the way it works, ladies and gentlemen, is the judge is bound by, let's say, I'll say it in layman's terms, by certain guidelines. Like the judge just can't make rulings here and there. The way it works is they only focus on what's before the court. They can only issue rulings on before the court, motions that are filed. They can't just say, oh, well, I'm going to do this. Oh, I'm going to do that. They're not allowed to legally. So the magistrate judge did state, well, before me, I have the writ of habeas corpus that was filed by the defense arguing that Karen Silva was here illegally. She's being detained illegally. The defense team is making the argument, we want her to be sent back to ICE. Why? Because she will get credit if she is found guilty of her federal case. If she were to remain in Cameron County, she wouldn't get any credit for it. And usually the way it works, ladies and gentlemen, is that based on the order that was signed, well, she still has not been indicted by the state, by Cameron County. So technically, legally, she should not be in Cameron County. Why? Because legally she is under the custody of the federal government. The judge did read the Supreme Court case of Mauro. And in that court case, it does not consider that her posting bond, that there is no detainer anymore. All that the judge had before her was the writ, whether or not she should be detained in Cameron County or not. Now, the judge did state that there is one sentence in the order that was signed previously that which kind of forced the sheriff to take custody of Karen Silva because of the lingo, the language in that order. There is one sentence in that order that states that she is to be held until conviction or acquittal. The judge did call, well, at the request of the defense counsel, Sergeant Frank Mason, the defense counsel and the judge did ask Lieutenant Mason, do we house ICE detainees that have no pending cases? Again, the state did not file a motion to increase her bond. Many people were arguing, why did she only receive a $10,000 bond? We don't know with certainty, but we can allude, we could assume, I know what you're going to say, it's never right to assume, but she was given a low bond because of her ICE detainer. And we say this because her co-worker, Sandy Ruiz, was issued a $60,000 bond for the same charge, if I'm not mistaken. So Sergeant Frank Mason did go before the judge to answer this very important question. Does Cameron County house ICE detainees that do not have no pending cases? Sheriff Sergeant Mason did state, no, only on a detainer for 48 hours. She does not have any pending charges. So technically, we can't house her. And there was an argument that stated, hey, well, if there is no legal argument, if there isn't law for her to be housed in Cameron County, well, then two things should happen. Either ICE should come pick her up or she should be released. Because according to Frank Mason's testimony before the court, that is what happens. Whenever they arrest an individual with an ICE detainer, they call the federal government and say, hey, this individual, she has an ICE detainer, come pick her up. They have 48 hours. According to Sergeant Mason, if the federal government does not pick up a defendant within 48 hours, they release them. Now, the whole issue here, again, was to decide whether Karen Silva was being held in violation of an order. Because, again, she did post bond. ICE did hold her. The state requested on a writ to bring her back. So now she's in limbo. So, once again, before they were going to conclude the hearing, they brought back Sergeant Frank Mason. They said, so technically, does ICE have 48 hours to come pick her up? If not, she gets released? Sergeant Frank Mason said, no, that she is not here on a detainer. So the 48 hours does not apply to her case. What she is in Cameron County for is a writ at the request of Cameron County. So essentially what's going to happen, ladies and gentlemen, is that Cameron County will take her back to federal custody. We learned how Karen Silva does have an immigration hearing in, I believe it was Harlingen, if not Port Isabel, in December. It was the argument of Arturo Teniente on behalf of the state that it is his belief, he stated in open court, it is his belief that Karen Silva will get deported and she won't face she won't face trial for this crime. So what's going to happen, ladies and gentlemen? After today's hearing, I would say that this is a victory for the defense, because when we think of Cameron County, unfortunately, when we talk about their infrastructure, it's not the best. We learned that this individual was in a cell with numerous inmates, and that there was a backed up water line that started spewing wastewater into the cells. And can you imagine, a pregnant woman having to deal with those conditions? So it was the defense's request. We want her to go back to ICE. We want her to go back to the federal government. Why? Because of their infrastructure. She'll be getting the care and proper treatment. She'll be getting her prenatal vitamins that will help her, in her pregnancy. So that is what happened, ladies and gentlemen. We will be following this story as it develops. Again, this is a story that has touched the heart and captivated the minds of lots of people, in particular in South Texas. And unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, this case, the death of baby Logan, will be the example for preschools, daycare centers, and adult daycare centers in their proper procedures on how what's the best way to send off students and also receive them when they get back from the wherever destination or wherever field trip they may be. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in. We apologize for coming on late, but again, whenever we have a story, we're always chasing it, and we'll always make sure that we post where we are just to let y'all know. So thank you so much for your patience. Now the question that we should ask ourselves, and again, I asked my community to have an open mind, because as of right now, the defense team or all parties involved do not have, and when I talk about defense, I'm talking about Karen Silva and Sandy Ruiz, they do not have camera footage. According to sources, the van that brought back the 24, 25 children did park right in front of a camera. What is the footage going to show us? Right now, Karen Silva is being crucified. And I understand the community's resentment towards her. But before we pass judgment, ladies and gentlemen, let us wait until the facts are all on the table. What if, and I hate to use this because I've already been criticized, but what if the child was brought back into the building? Anything is possible. We won't know, ladies and gentlemen. And I say that with all due respect. With all due respect to all parties involved. I understand that this is a very delicate case. But until all parties view the footage of that day, we won't know essentially who's at fault. We feel as if the investigators, and I understand they have a very difficult job, that they rush to charge Karen Silva. What will the footage show from that day? Only time will tell. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in. Best believe that Good Morning Bronzo will be before you whenever there is breaking news, whenever there is a story to cover. We want to make sure that you get the whole enchilada. That is the only way in which we will be able to better understand these types of cases. We'll do our best to chase the story and bring it to you as soon as we have it. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for tuning in. My name is Frank Olivo, and this is Good Morning Bronzo. Happy weekend. Happy Friday. Peace.